to dive into the intersection of AI, cybersecurity, and monetization, not just how we protect these technologies, but how we position and sell them. As AI adoption accelerates, so do the risks and the opportunities, especially for those who can align technical depth with business value. We've got two experts today, Bryant Tow and James D. Wilton, to unpack both sides of that equation, from protecting the infrastructure to pricing the innovation. Welcome to the Business of Tech Lounge, the live version of the Business of Tech podcast. It's Wednesday, May 14th, 2025, and I'm Dave Sobel. We'll take questions and comments throughout the show, so make sure to put them in chat. If you have a question, we'll happily respond to it. Now, I want to thank Sales Builder, our Patreon sponsor, whose support makes this show possible. Focus on your IT sales workflow with the power of automation and visit them at salesbuilder.com. That's BUILDR.com. A reminder, I am watching the chat. We'll keep an eye out for your questions and we'll pull them up on screen whenever they come in. Now, Bryant Tow is the Chief Security Officer at Leapfrog Services, where he leads comprehensive cybersecurity programs encompassing strategy, governance, and operations. He's recognized for his expertise in managing cyber risks, particularly in the context of emerging threats like AI-driven phishing and deepfakes. Bryant, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave.
I'm super excited to have you. And James Wilton is a founder and managing partner of Monovate, a consulting firm specializing in pricing and monetization strategies for SaaS and tech companies. With over a decade of experience, including leadership roles at McKinsey & Company and RELX, he is also the author of Capturing Value, the definitive guide to transforming SaaS pricing and unshackling growth. James, welcome to the live show.
Good to be here, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Now, guys, this is a fascinating mix of technical expertise and sales positioning. And I kind of want to start in right with a big issue that's going on right now, Brian. AI in business means two big risks: attackers targeting company data and attackers tampering with the models themselves. When you think about these risks, is there one that's more urgent that we have to put a priority on?
I think it depends on your perspective. If you have the model, obviously you want to protect it, and if you're using the model, certainly you want to protect your data, right? So having those two completely and unique defense positions impacts directly how you would want to use the model, right?
Gotcha. Now, James, this is interesting because as I think about this, when we're starting to now price these solutions, there's differing levels of what we're working on, right? We're looking on protecting company data, we're looking at integrating models, we're looking at enhancing the models, and talking about the value of dual layer protection, both data and model integrity. Is there a way to talk about this that justifies premium pricing for the approach?
Yeah, I think there absolutely is, right? And I think it just depends how you frame it up. I mean, so oftentimes within, there are many different types of cybersecurity company with different features, right? But I think oftentimes there are some which are really seen as the table stakes things that everybody needs to have. So those are things that people would expect to come as standard. And there are some things that sound like they're a little bit extra. They provide a little bit more protection. They're a little bit more advanced. And these are things that you can potentially put into premium bundles or potentially charge extra as add-ons if these are things that you think people are going to be willing to pay extra for. I think it's all about how different segments of your customer base are going to perceive the value for that. And of course, I think the other axis to that, we should probably talk about in more detail, is the architecture around it and thinking about how does the value scale with each of these features that you might be providing, and can you build a system that's going to allow you to charge appropriately for the amount of value that particular set of capabilities offers.
All right, Brian, you're obviously the man to give us some perspective on that. Like, how would we put that together? Let's particularly focus on the data itself, because I think the vast majority of customers are going to be thinking about protecting their data, where a subset are the ones that are going to be building models. What's the way that we should be thinking about approaching that with customers?
Yeah. Okay. So come at this from a lot of different levels. So first thing that you want to understand is there needs to be what we call an AI readiness assessment in place, right? And starting with the strategy, starting with how do you intend to use these models? Are you just purely doing chat-based models, chat GPT and so forth? Are you going to be doing videos and those kind of things? What is the use case and the value in the organization? And then that will give you guidance into what your infrastructure needs to look like. If it's simply chat, there's probably not much, but if you're doing heavy video editing and those kind of things, right? And then when you get to the data, that is really the primary key. And when you're getting ready for this type of thing, one of the things that people often forget is having that data properly categorized, right? So we have to have not only, because we talk about data classification as the primary thing for AI, so we know what we're protecting and where it is. But what I would argue, and having rolled out several of these kind of things for our clients, it's really the data retention that needs to be looked at first. Because just like if you were going to move across the country, you would probably have a yard sale before you moved everything, right? So before we apply all of these security measures just as a blanket across everything, we really need to classify. We need to make sure that we're only doing to the things that we need, and so having that data retention policy, which leads to the fourth of the categories, which is the governance. So even when you get down into like training, like for your users, there's two very specific training areas that we need to look at. Number one is the governance around the AI, right? What is acceptable use? How do we want our people to be using this type of thing? Which ones, if we can police which ones that they actually are using, and so forth. And then you need to train them how to use the tool, right? So govern the tool and how to use the tool. So there's two very specific governance things around that. But to the point of the data, it really starts with not just classification, but starts with retention.
Gotcha. Now, James, we both know that clients, their eyes are going to start glazing over too much at governance. Now, I know it's a foundational element to be successful at the end, but oftentimes they're going to resist that initial step because they want to get to the perceived business value. Are there particular ways that you look at this? We kind of oftentimes put assessments or onboarding in a particular pricing category. Like, is there a way that works best to position this kind of work?
To position the work of assessing the risk, Dave?
Yeah, the assessment and the governance work that needs to be put in place first to make things useful with the AI data.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think like oftentimes you find these kind of services and evaluations are done on these sort of setup or onboarding fees first, right? Because this is something which is it's not something that necessarily equates to ongoing value that the company provides, but it's something which there is value in terms of getting you set up there. So a lot of companies will end up putting those into those setup or implementation fees when they're establishing these systems.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, the other thing that I knew that was an area that's real issue here is Bryant, you've talked about the fact that the cybersecurity workforce isn't quite ready for the complexity of AI threats. Are there particular skills that, managed services providers, SOC teams, security teams really need to be investing in to prep for this?
Yeah, so interesting. If you're familiar with the RSA conference, this was like the world's largest security conference. Was just this past week,
Yeah.
and the skill gap was top of mind for a lot of those areas. One of the most interesting things in that topic was one of the keynotes. We're basically talking about going after gamers. And they applied the basic mentality of gamers being like threat hunting, for example. And they applied it to the. And I don't know the names of the games because I unfortunately am not a gamer. But it was really attaching that mentality to that skill set, which was really really interesting to me. So I'm sure you could find that very quickly if you searched for it. The biggest challenge that we have in not having the skills is where do they come from, right? So typically when we need something, we go out and get it, and we go hire it in. So you're seeing two different models in that. So you're hiring it fractionally to be able to get what you need for when you need it, especially as AI adoption is coming in and we're kind of sticking our toes in the water, and then a lot of those types of fractional positions will come temp to perm. And the other way is to take somebody that has capability and train from within. I'd say most of the skills gap that's being closed is literally being able to take people with not necessarily the skills, but with the capacity, and then putting them in that area. Because there's a lot of people that are running to security, which is great, but they're not the general migration of the herd, so to speak, is not exactly fast enough, and it's just kind of all over the place.
Now, James, I've been thinking about the skills gap problem from the positioning of outsourcing here, right? And that traditionally, when we look at a space that has less skills in it, we oftentimes talk to customers that, hey, that's a service we can deliver for you because you're not going to be able to find those people themselves. But we're also kind of in a world, in a space right now where cost cutting is very heavily, and people are looking at outsourced contracts as one of the things to cut. Are there differences in message right now around the skills gap conversation, or is it the same consistent message still resonates with customers?
I think it just means that, as with so many things in pricing, right? If you're going to be talking about you're essentially selling this thing, you have to start with value and try to get a good sense of like how coming to us, getting the service from us, delivers value that goes above and beyond what you could do on your own. And this is a tricky space and area, right? Because AI technology so nascent, there's still a lot of people figuring it out. It may not be apparent that some of the things that you will do here. What we have seen to be quite effective in this kind of case is to be able to actually try to break down how the value scales with a value calculator for customers. You can basically say, if you were to try to put an estimate on the amount of value that completing this service with us would give you, you'd calculate it by this. It is the risk that you are avoiding multiplied by the probability that you avoid this risk, potentially like comparing the risk if you are adopting a technology like this versus not. And that then like kind of allows them to get their arms around that extra value. And look, you're always going to have certain customer segments who are very price sensitive and frankly are going to go for avoiding the cost, even if there is value there. But those value centered buyers who most of the time we're going to be wanting to attract, that messaging is going to resonate, provided that you nail the articulation of it.
Gotcha. Now, interestingly, you just brought up something that I'm curious to go in this. Is the price sensitivity is often linked to size of customer. It's a
Right.
general kind of rule in this, and I know, Brian, we also see this in cybersecurity resistance, right? In the smaller the customer, the more typical. Brian, when you think about the cybersecurity and AI issues as we try and sort of scale them down for smaller customers, are there particular approaches of delivering the solution, or when we think about things like deepfake attacks and insider threat amplification, are there ways of positioning this and bundling it for smaller customers that are particularly effective that help them align with that price sensitivity?
Yeah, and to what James was talking about as the value, we have to start with what exactly. And I mentioned at the top of the show is talking about use cases and strategy, and figuring out what exactly that is. And I think, as James was saying, the next step to that is to establish what the value is. In the security space, we don't say return on investment because it's a little bit like car insurance, right? So whoever got a return on investment on their car insurance until something happens, and you get a payout, very much in the cyberspace, right? So it's really difficult to measure that as a metric. But I think the way we do it in cyber does apply over to AI. And by that, what I mean is we look at levels of maturity. So, for example, if we are doing XYZ with our technology and we're doing XYZ with our governance, right, looking at processes and and we're able to improve process efficiency with a certain level of that, and I've seen a lot of the AI models where you look at the level of work that is being done now, right? So, like the human capital element of that, and then how much does that, what's the cost of the labor, cost of all the other things, and whatnot? What does it look like after? Right, there's a gap in there somewhere. But on the security side, with what we're doing, if we're able to look at if we're doing all of these things, like I mentioned in the assessment, in the readiness assessment, there's definitely a way to be able to see we're doing this, and therefore our risk is significantly reduced, and that should be the pathway forward, right?
You bring up that sort of reduction in risk as the element to it. And James, I'm kind of really curious to get your take on how pricing reflects where risk is. Because I would feel like this is an element that needs to be translated into the cost of something. For delivering value, it has to build in the risk. How do we build in risk properly into pricing?
Yeah, no, well, first off, let's just call out it's challenging, right? Because really, like risk is a little bit intangible, but like that is where the value comes from. It's like it's protection against risk. It is cost avoidance from having a disaster, essentially, right? You prevent these disasters from happening. But yeah, you really, as you would with building out a pricing strategy for anything, what's really important is to try to identify the factors that are going to scale with the amount of opportunity here. So for risk, it could be, is it that, does the risk increase with the level of exposure that you have, like with your attack surface, for example, or the amount of attacks on you, or does it scale with the sensitivity of the data, like the type of data that you are protecting? Would it be more damaging for you to lose your data than for somebody else because of the nature of the data that you have? There are usually multiple different factors for this, right? And within a good pricing strategy, what you're trying to do is price differentiate, build a structure that allows you to scale the price based on all these different areas. So that's the guidance that you should be thinking about, really thinking about what are the dimensions that affect that value, and build out a structure that does that. And in a lot of cases, not always, right? In a lot of cases, that usually means there is going to be some element of your pricing structure which is tied to the size of the company, right? Something about that shows that scale is going to equate to the value. So it could be a usage thing or a workload thing. It could be about the size of the organization, the number of endpoints, whatever it is, right? That ties to the scale. And there potentially could be another sort of what we would call an implicit factor, where you're changing the price list depending on companies that are in different sectors, which kind of aligns to the value that they get for their particular scale, given the nature of their particular business. And with all this, it really comes down to your objectives and how granularly do you want to be able to price, differentiate, and maximize your capture of the customer's willingness to pay, and what's your tolerance for complexity on your end, right? There's a lot of, if you end up with this multivariate price model, there's a lot of complexity your sales teams have to be able to manage the price in that way.
Now, Brian, Jim said something I'm really kind of curious to get your take on is like, can we play with some of the parameters of security pricing in a way? Like, could we charge based on attack surface exposed? Like, could we charge and position on some of the more potentially customer controllable risks, exposure or lack of training? Like, could we charge based on those?
Yes, I think so. Okay, so attack surface is an interesting metric. So when you're looking at risk overall, external drivers, bad guys out there, and people, the amount of threats and ransomware groups and all those kind of things that we have no control over. We do have control over our attack surface, and minimizing that threat vector, minimizing that attack surface is always the key. To start your program. So if you're charging for that, then you can reduce the cost by reduction of the overall attack surface. And then how the data in and of itself is stored, and where it is stored, and what the threat would be to that data. And I'll give you examples. So any of our managed customers that are on our premium stack, meaning they have endpoint, they've got SIEM, they've got everything that we do for security. If they have all of those things in place, we have very few, if any, problems with those clients. Very well, and you could argue today that the adversaries are not so much breaking in as they are logging in. Just because we've all reached terminal velocity with our data, because it's all been breached, I guess, probably at some point. So clients that fall victim to an MFA fatigue or something along those lines, where you'll get an account takeover. But then 9 times out of 10, we'll catch that under unusual login. because we watch that and we'll see it before really anything happens. So when you talk about pricing and so forth, if you spend the money, you will reduce the risk, and if you don't spend the money, you won't. 90% or higher of all of the issues that we have with clients are those that are very hesitant. Maybe it's because of price point, maybe it's because cultural inertia towards not wanting to do the things that they need to be doing. A lot of the executives are not to be ageist, but they're older and they like kind of things the way that they are, and they resist that change, and those are the ones that get hit. Because they won't put the MFA in place, or they won't do something like that because it's going to cause them a little bit of a problem. So, that's where we have our problems.
Well, find younger customers is a more difficult way to approach this, right? Now, James, as I think about that, like, there's a classic answer that I want to make sure is still relevant here in terms of the value of an ongoing service. Brian's just described a premium service, which is exactly what we want to get our customers to and delivering. But I know that there are potential risks in terms of once you've been perceived as always making the problem go away, at times the fatigue goes away and like, well, why am I paying for this? Are there particular bits of advice that you offer broadly to sort of say like, hey, these are the things you do when you've achieved what Brian's exactly talking about to make sure that customers continue to perceive the value over time?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's like shifting baseline that we talked about, right? Like, we sort of started here and I improved things and got you to here, but now we've been here for a long time and now I don't see the benefit anymore because we're here, right?
Right.
It's difficult. I think one thing that companies can think about doing is always sort of reminding what that starting point was and calling out the change that has been made, if indeed you have driven that change. And I think depending on the nature of the particular product that you're talking about as well, you may be able to run reports that show this is the work that this particular solution is doing for you over time. Like, for example, if you have if it's an anomaly detection type software, right? These are the amount of anomalies that we have detected over the past X months, and that you have been able to resolve here. So while day to day, the buyer may not be seeing anything happening because they're not having attacks going through, threats are being neutralized, you are communicating all these things that are happening in the background and letting them know that there's a lot of value going on that is keeping their life relatively event free.
Yeah, and Dave, I have something for that as well. Something
great.
Yeah, so something that when I talk to my clients, because that objection, we'll call it, is very common. And why am I paying for this? Nothing's happening. To which I tell those people, I want you to go out and take out your seatbelts and your airbags out of your car right now, because you're not using them at the moment. You're not seeing any, whatever. So, oh wait, that's still there's still a risk there. And you're doing these things to continually, you wear a helmet, when you ride a motorcycle, you've got locks on your doors, you have all these little things. So I want you to go take all of those things away because, you've not had anybody break in your house for a year. Well, you don't need locks on your doors anymore. You should take them off. Right. And and as silly maybe as that may sound, it's the actual truth. The reason you aren't having those types of problems is because you have locks on your doors, right? And that kind of thing. So it's a bit of a joke, but there's actually a lot of truth and a lot of value in that kind of a comparison.
Well, I'm going to, as I sort of get us towards the end of this conversation here, I've got one sort of follow-up for each of you that I'd like to think about. We've talked about the security skills shortage, but we also then danced a little bit into some of the messaging. Is there a bit of a messaging shortage here? Are the security leaders doing enough to connect with the go-to-market teams and driving the right kind of value conversation out to the customer?
I'll take that one. So,
so
I'm not sure where that was going, but Dave knows I always have something to say. So here we go. So I'm gonna reflect that back to you, Dave, in just a little bit different way, and say that the answer should be yes, but the value and where that comes from is not the security people. the value where that comes from, and understanding, comprehending the risk, and then the value that's placed on that, and how the business is protected, needs to come from the leadership of the business itself.
Okay.
If it comes from the security guy, we're all a bunch of people that are crying wolf, and we don't know what we're talking about anyway, because for whatever. But the business minded person that can understand, can comprehend the risks, associate that into the business model, and then communicate using their language back into the organization. That's really where and we call that tone from the top, right? It's an age old cybersecurity term. But from a business perspective, and demonstrating overall value, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, so to speak, is taking that understanding, comprehending of risk, and translating it to the business language, so that it's understood what those risks are to the business, not to the technology.
And James, as you look at this side of from the other side, as you're looking at it from the business solution to the technical teams,
Yeah.
what's your take on the kind of potential misalignment there about positioning these kinds of solutions?
It's interesting you kind of brought this way, Dave. I mean, I think what I've seen looking at this is that I hear a lot of pull from the buyers, sort of saying, like, we are concerned about the security of our data with AI, right? That we don't know where all this data is going. We need to make sure it's protected, et cetera, et cetera. I see that a lot from the clients that I've been speaking to, and also just a lot of the stuff that I've been reading around the space as well. So I think that is there. And yet there are a lot of AI native solutions that you look at, and I don't see many of them talking about advanced security features or trying to differentiate themselves on their level of security. And I think it's an opportunity, right? There is a hunger there, and there is a need there. And I think there's an opportunity for somebody to be able to say, we are more secure. We will make sure that everything is protected, and make you feel very good and safe about adopting all this technology in the way that you would like to adopt it.
Well, I think we've just identified where some of the good opportunity is. Guys, I don't want to be taking too much of your time, so I want to make sure listeners get an opportunity to reach out if they've got follow-up questions, particularly if they're watching the recording. Bryant, if people are interested in getting in touch, what's the best way for them to do so?
It's real simple. On any of the socials, Leapfrog Services. We're leapfrogservices.com. There's my email address. You can certainly find me there, or on LinkedIn.
And James, if people are interested in learning more about what you're up to about pricing, how can they reach out?
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. I think best way would be on LinkedIn. My handle is James D. Wilton.
Guys, this has been interesting to match the risks of cybersecurity out there with the best way that we can do positioning. And I really appreciate you joining me today.
Thanks, Dave.
Now, I want to tease an interview that actually has already come out, and I wanted to make sure you didn't miss it. Srinivas Krishnaswamy joined me for a discussion about his new book, Inbound Marketing in the Age of GPT, which delves into the evolving landscape of customer search behavior driven by AI and its implications for managed services providers. He shared some actionable insights on optimizing marketing strategies, leveraging community engagement, and adapting to the new AI-driven content consumption paradigm to effectively reach and resonate with target audiences. Here's a preview of that interview.
Gotcha. Now let's balance that a little bit, because you've given some thought into the difference of what search is really good for, and now what this new AI prompt paradigm is for. Help me, frame that a little bit for me. There's certain things then that traditional search is going to be really great at, and what's the difference with what the prompting is going to be really good for?
That's a great question, right? See, there are, if you were to really break down the types of searches that people typically have, it falls into one of the three buckets. First one is informational. I'm searching for information. For example, what are some of the options available for me to secure my mobile devices that my employees might be using on the field? So that's the search. Obviously, if you're in Google, you probably have a shorter search phrase. Maybe you will type the entire sentence, whatever I just said, in ChatGPT to get an answer. In these scenarios, generative AI chatbots really do a terrific job in responding to you. The reason they are able to do that is because you can give it a lot more context in your prompts. You don't have to just restrict it to the question that I said. In fact, you can even provide context. For example, I am a business, let's say I am a nonprofit business, and I have people on the field carrying tablets. They're going from place to place, uh, collecting donations, and they have these tablets that will allow them to register the donor information and collect payments. Let's come up with this hypothetical example. So, if I were to add this context to this to the prompt in ChatGPT, I will get a really tailor-made response. Now, I can't expect that kind of a response with Google search. So there is a fundamental difference in the way GPT works vis-a-vis Google search. And in the context of informational searches, like the example that I gave you, GPT will win hands down in terms of the quality of content, right? Or the response. But then there are other types. For example, if you go to the next slide, you also have navigational searches and transactional searches. Now, there is a difference between the two. What are navigational searches? So these are, for example, when you know where you want to go. For example, log into this particular application, log in for ABC app, right? So you already know where you want to go. And in this case, it's kind of, pointless to expect a, 10 paragraph response. You just need the URL that will allow you to, get there. Similarly, transactional intent, right? These are, e-commerce purchase related intent, right? Where you are really looking at buying something of value. And so these are two types of searches where, GPT hasn't really solved it very well because of the nature or the interface that they have built. But I am guessing, given few more quarters, they will start going after these types of interactions as well. It's just a question of figuring it out in terms of how do you really bake it into the conversation model that they have built. That's number one. And at the end of the day, I also think market forces will force them to make money eventually. Right now, they have pulled in billions and billions and dollars of investments. At some point in time, you'll have to start making money. So the money lies in the transactional search terms, which results in a sale, right? Closer to the bottom of the funnel. So that is where the difference is right now.
This conversation came up several times in news articles I've covered on the regular news show, and thus why I wanted to highlight this as well as part of what we're seeing going forward. Now, my patrons get access to my interviews early. They can sign up at patreon.com/MSPradio to sign up and get early access to all my videos. Interviews drop on the YouTube channel and podcast feed on the weekend. Now, I want to thank Sales Builder, our Patreon sponsor, whose support makes this show possible. Focus on your IT sales workflow with the power of automation and visit them at salesbuilder.com. That's BUILDR.com. And vendors, you too can get your name mentioned on the live show. It's a simple monthly subscription. Visit patreon.com/MSPradio for more information. And listeners, you can support the show. Like, share, and follow on your favorite platforms, or support directly on Patreon with our Give What You Want model. You set what you think the content is worth, and you get access to videos early. If you have a question and are listening to the recording, send it in at question@mspradio.com. Thanks for joining me for the Business to Tech Lounge, and I will see you next time.